Well, I want to welcome everybody back to our podcast. And on today's show, we have Dr. Neil and his wife, Wannee Thompson, joining us. I'm excited to hear your testimony. I know a bit about it, parts of how you guys met, other sides of the world, growing up, and all those kinds of things, and some of the things you did in ministry. But in our show, we like to go back to the very beginning and hear from what was happening as where you were born, what was happening, how God was moving, how God was unfolding his story in your lives. And so welcome to the show. And
here.
Yeah, super glad you're here. And I guess we'll just start. Neil, if you would like to start sharing off, what was life like, where you were born, growing up, and how was God moving?
Thank you, Rodney. Great to be with you. My father was in World War II, and I was born 1944, just as the war was coming to an end. Didn't learn much about the war from him. He didn't want to talk about it, like most veterans. I grew up in Collingswood, New Jersey, just across the river, Delaware River from Philadelphia. I guess the biggest influences in my life, beyond my parents and two younger brothers, was school. I had very good school, very good school teachers, and church. Right around the corner was the First Methodist Church, and learned so much about the Lord and lots of fellowship through high school. There were fellowship meals for breakfast and before sports games, before competitions. That was just a great time. As I moved on to college, I wanted to go to a Christian school. My mom and dad said, "No, you need to learn about the world. You're going to go to a secular school." And they took me to Franklin and Marshall College in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and that's where I went. And that turned out to be a very, very good experience. In my sophomore year, my Sunday school teacher from home got in touch with me and said, "There's this missions conference coming up, and I've asked a couple of your friends from high school if they want to go, and would you like to go?" And I said, "Well, I wouldn't want to waste a spot. I'm not really interested in missions." But he said, "Oh, why don't you go?" And I did, and that turned out to be the InterVarsity Christian Fellowship Urbana Conference in 1964. I think all we did was look around to see who the pretty girls were. The speaker was a man by the name of Reverend John Stott.
Oh, yeah.
And I had never heard of him before, but he was one of the major evangelical people of the 20th century. He was teaching about 2 Corinthians, and I was just amazed and very impressed. And in 2 Corinthians, we need to be ambassadors for Christ, and we need to follow Christ. And that really hit me. And that was probably like maybe a second turning to God story, or a reawakening. And I really felt that God was leading me into missions at that time.
So you were a believer at the time?
Yeah. I had become a believer through the ministry of that Methodist church when I was in my probably 14 or 15 years old. And so this was a couple of years later in college. Yeah.
Yeah. Was your family the believers throughout your whole life?
Mom was, she carried her Bible everywhere, and she had her devotions, and we were part of that. Dad was a little bit more of a skeptic. Being in World War II didn't help him any. So I'm not sure where he was in his faith journey, but I think he came to the Lord toward the end of his life.
And so when you're going, early in your years, when you're going to this church family, everything's okay. They're okay with it.
Mom went to church all the time. Dad went to church because of the kids, I think. And when we grew up, I'm not sure that he continued.
Well, then you go off you're at Urbana, feeling this nudge in the missions. So how does that begin to unfold?
I think you said you saw the medical missions seminar or something.
Yeah, I think Elizabeth Elliot was one of the speakers.
Oh, wow.
And in the book that she wrote about her husband, the beginning was, "He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose." And that just stayed with me throughout my life. So the Bible teaching was excellent. And I was wandering along the hall, and there was a seminar on medical missions. And I was standing at the door for a while. And then there was a guy who had just shared about, he went over to Africa, worked in a mission hospital when he was a student or a resident or something. That just put an idea in my head. It was something I had never experienced before.
Were you actually studying medicine at the time?
No, this was in college. I was a biology major, but I hadn't even committed to pre-med at that point. But since I thought I was going to go into botany or something like that. So I was in the right major. And as a result of this conference, God really moved me. And I felt maybe I should go into biology for sure, maybe become pre-med and think about medical school. And that was a challenge because my grades weren't all that good at that point. I was a wrestler and my grades are not that good. So I took off my junior year. I actually didn't wrestle because I really needed to focus on studies and spent most of that wrestling season in the library. I did get my grades up and was able to get into medical school. Where God really fed me through those times was introducing me to a very tiny intervarsity Christian fellowship group at Franklin and Marshall, and then finding a Christian Medical Society, now Christian Medical Dental Associations.
Wow.
And I was in medical school in Philadelphia. And both of these groups really helped to form me and ground me in God's Word.
Wow, that's a lot of changes from one conference.
That conference has affected my whole life, really. I mean, it was one of those pivotal times when you're not expecting anything and God is there. And I guess my heart was open at that point. My mom and dad weren't too excited about it, but they put up with this new young fanatic in the family.
But you're becoming a doctor, though.
I had them hooked from that standpoint.
Yeah.
Because your parents, they want to be proud of their son hanging up a shingle a few miles away where they can brag about. And it took them a couple of years before they could brag about my going to Thailand. That took a little bit longer to catch on.
Before we get to that point, speaking of a few miles away, Wannee, let's jump into your story from childhood. But in order to do that, we literally have to go many miles away to the other side of the world.
Yes. Thank you, Rodney. Okay, I don't know how many miles away, but if you put a pencil through the globe, it's just right across from U.S. Anyway, I was born and raised in Thailand and to a Chinese middle class ancestor worship. That's my family. I have 3 older sisters and 1 younger brother. And I'm number 4. And the Chinese family, they all want boy and not just girls. And so when I was born, and because I'm the 4th daughter, and the doctor or a midwife or somebody who delivered me told my mom, gave me a name, Miang Lai in Chinese, which means don't come. I was like, that's not nice. I don't like this guy. Anyway, so that was kind of the background, grew up in the Chinese ancestor worship. So I think the first time I heard about Jesus was when I was 11 years old. And it was through my sister. She came home from school and she said she's a Christian. At that point, I have no idea what it meant. I don't know anything about Christianity or Jesus or anything like that. So my sister, the education system in Thailand is different than the US. So in Thailand, to go to university, you have to take the entrance exam. Everybody, the last year of high school, you take the exam together. So a chance for you to get into the school of your choice is very low if you're not that smart or you don't have good grades. So everybody tried to improve their knowledge by going for extracurriculum activities or go to a tuition school and stuff like that. So my sister and her friend went to one tuition center, which started by 5 professors. They're all Christians. They all came to know the Lord when they study overseas. They get together, they kind of like an English center or something like that. So my sister and her friend went to the center and they used Bible as a textbook. So one of her friends accepted Christ through this teaching English. And my sister was so mad and she said, hey, we are here to learn English. We are not here to be brainwashed by this professor. So she took the Bible home. The point was she wanted to go learn it and come back and argue with all these professors that the Bible was wrong, And then she said along the way, she found Christ.
Wow.
And she accepted Christ through that. And so she came home and told my sisters and me about God. And I was 11, so I don't understand a thing. But my 2 older sisters, they accepted Christ. And so things just began to happen in my family. My dad thought, they're teenagers. My sister were I was 11, so they're 13, 15, and 17. So my dad said, oh, they're teenage, things would change. So let it ride for a while. One of my sister went off and told her friends about God, and that friends accepted Christ. And so that friend's dad was so upset. So he came to my dad and just yelling at him, like, how come you let your daughter do this to my daughter? And so that's when my dad got really upset. And he kind of, persecuting them, persecuting my sisters. He make it really hard for them to believe in God. He would search their school backpack. If there's a Bible, he would just burn them, throw it away. He would make them eating the food that offered to the spirits and stuff like that. And I saw all of this. I was scared to death. I remember one time I came home from school and my mom was crying. I asked mom, like, what happened? Why are you crying? And she said, oh, your dad is beating your sisters. He used the belt. And I was like, oh no, I definitely don't want my dad to beat me. I'm so scared. And then I still remember my sister told me that God is love. And I saw what happened in my family. Like, if God is love, how come nobody in my family is not happy? Dad was upset and mad. Mom's crying. And my sister are crying because dad's beating them up. I was just like, if this means God is love, I don't want to believe in this God. But along the way, I think my dad kind of tried everything to stop my sisters from believing in God. But they keep persisting. They still continue to believe in God. He stopped them from going to school, asked them to choose if they want to go to school or to church. They decided they wanted to go to church. Wow. So they stopped going to school for a while. And then I think my grandma kind of stepped in and let them kind of asked my dad to let them go back to school. So dad said, yes, okay, you can go to church and go to school, but they are not allowed to tell me and my younger brother about Christ. So that was the deal. During that time, I saw like my dad beat them up and they get together and pray. And it doesn't make sense to me. Like, why do you do that? Why don't just give up? Because dad didn't want me to believe in God, I get everything I want. I got new clothes, I got toys, I got snack, everything I want, I get it. So I just don't understand. And every time my dad beat them, they get together in prayer. I was like, that's so silly. So anyway, so that kind of passed 6 years later. So this is what I've seen in those 6 years. And my dad became more religious. So he would take us my brother and I, to the temple to worship the Chinese god and stuff like that. And I remember one time we were at this Chinese temple festival or whatever, and there's a huge Chinese god in front of the temple, and I'm just about to worship this Chinese god. And I thought, wonder which one is real, the one in front of me or the one that my sister praying to? Which one? I don't know, but I want to worship the real God. So that was in my head. So 6 years later, from when my older sister came to know the Lord, my family has a small grocery stores, like 7-Eleven. We were robbed over New Year's Day. So we lost a lot of money. From that, it caused us to run into big financial trouble. And so my dad was asking his God, we have an idol shelf at home. So he would ask this God to help him financially. Nothing happened. The neighbor would come and say, hey, with this God, you offer this food, he would bless you. We did that. Nothing happened. Another one would come, oh, dude, this goddess, you offer her this flower, she would bless you. We did that. Nothing happened. And then the Christian guy stopped by to kind of visit my dad and kind of challenge him in a sense, like ask him, why don't you ask a Christian God to help? And my dad would say, oh, I don't believe in your God. Why would he help me? And then this Christian man was saying, like, if you don't try, you don't know. And my dad thought, hey, we're just about to go bankrupt. It's not going to hurt. So I thought he'd pray for God to help. And things happened. He prayed that God, we need, let's say, $500 extra money today so that we have enough money in the bank and stuff like that. And God just brought enough customer. We have exactly $500.
Wow.
And that's a coincidence. Change the number, make it 1,000. My aunt stopped by and here's $1,000. Just
Wow.
like that. And things happen like this many times. And dad was kind of like, what happened here? When he prayed to his God, nothing happened. But when he prayed to the Christian God, this happened. looking back, like he was, when during that 6 years, when he was beating up my sisters, the pastor would come home and try to explain to my dad what Christianity is all about. We believe in Jesus, we are not a cult. So dad, and he even go to church to find out, learn about Christianity, to pick up my sister from church. So he has a basic general knowledge about Christianity, about Jesus. And then when he searched my sister, I said, like, if he find the Bible, he will burn them, right? But he kept one because he wanted to know what my sister are reading. So he kept one. So he have a knowledge. So when God started answer his prayer, he said one night he had a dream and he saw Jesus die on the cross. He knew it was for his sin. He woke up, accepted Christ by himself, and took us all to church. So that's how my whole family come to know the Lord. And me
That's
too.
incredible.
So
That's incredible. How old were you at the time?
17 when
17 years old.
17. But the thing is, when we accepted
story.
Christ at that time, I was wondering, like, do I really believe God? Or I just follow my dad because I was so afraid of him, right? By the way, his life really changed after he accepted Christ. So I remember at church, after I accepted Christ, maybe a year into that, I shared with one of my sister's friend, the one from the tuition center, the first one that come to know the Lord. I shared with her that I wasn't sure if I really saved. I wasn't sure if I really believe. And then she said, so let's look at the Bible. What did the Bible say? In Romans, it said, if you believe in your heart, if you confess in your mouth, believe in your heart that Jesus Christ is Lord, you're saved. And so we read that one. And she said, so what did the Bible say? So I just repeat what I just read. And she said, so do you believe that? I said, yes. Did you confess that? I said, yes. Then you are saved. I said, really? That was it? And I think looking back, I remember my sister shared her experience with me. Like when they accepted Christ, they were overjoyed with peace and gratitude and sadness with their own sin. So I was looking at that experience as a confirmation for my salvation. But this friend, my sister's friend, was kind of pointing out to me that God's word is good enough. I don't need the experience to affirm that. I think that maybe the beginning of me learning to trust God's promise without the emotion that I was looking for as a confirmation.
Wow, that's an incredible life transformation that your sisters got to lead.
If they gave up then when my dad beat them up,
Yeah,
I won't be here today.
that's incredible. When you at 17 and you're moving on 18, 19, 20, did you eventually go off into university? And how did maybe it was when you guys met, we'll get into that, when you started to think about missions, but kind of those university years and then the whole thought of missions.
I didn't go to university. It's called like technical school. Assumption Commercial College. And my first year, I was not a believer then. And then the second year, I became a believer. So my friends were making fun of me. My house, my family business was robbed. We are in the front page of the newspaper. So everybody know what happened. And now I come to know the Lord. I remember my friends was making fun of me. Like, oh, look at Wannee. Now the house was robbed. Now they're a believer. Why didn't God help them? And it just made fun of me. I was just like, God, please help me. I don't know how to answer them. I don't know what to do. Or sometimes I pray before having lunch with my friends. They were just, I close my eyes and pray. And when I opened my eyes, all the goodies on my plate were gone. I was just like, this is not fair. What did I do to you? Why did you do this to me? But at the end of our college year, we have a New Year party together. And one of my friends said, hey, we don't eat yet. Let Wannee pray first. And then we can just go. I was just like, wow. Anyway, so that's God's amazing. How do I get into mission? Is that the question you asked?
Yeah. Were you thinking about that at the time or?
No, I'm after money.
Which is why she didn't want
money.
The money, marry a poor doctor.
That's why she didn't want to marry. She knew she didn't want to marry a pastor.
Well, let's go back to that, because while you're going through this, Neil's back here in the States going into med school with a feeling like I'm called into missions. So Neil, why don't you bring us back to that? And how was that unfolding in your life at that time?
I think while I was still in college, I did feel the call into missions, but I had never even thought about going into medicine or being a doctor. That was put into my head at that seminar that I told you that I stopped by and was listening to this guy. So all this was very formative, and my grades were not, they weren't all that wonderful, but I guess they were just
good enough.
Just good enough to get into medical school. And
you didn't tell that to your patients later on in life, did you?
That's classified information, Rodney.
I just barely got through.
I could only tell that story after I was retired.
Okay.
No, I wasn't the bottom of the class. I was in the middle third of the class.
Oh, okay.
There you go. So mediocre. So I was in med school, and I began telling friends that I was thinking of becoming a missionary. I didn't even know what that meant. And this all hit me probably in my junior year of medical school. And I thought, I'm telling people I want to be a missionary. I have no idea what that means. Well, I thought back to that guy that was talking back at Urbana, and here he had gone overseas. He had gotten a short-term experience. And so early in med school, I began to take extra courses so that I could take a part of my senior year off. And during that time, I thought I'd go to Africa. Everyone I wrote to didn't get back to me. And then there was a guy named Dr. Arthur Glasser, China Inland Missionary. And then when he came home, he became the national director. I think it was of North America at that time. I got to meet him at a meeting somehow, and he went out to F&M and spoke to the university group. And he's the one who really got me interested in medical missions. He got the name of the superintendent of this little hospital in central Thailand, Manoram Christian Hospital. At that time, it was in the mid-'60s, so it was just over 10 years old. He wrote to them, asked if the student could go over, and they said yes. And so just like that, all of a sudden, in the middle semester of my senior year, I went and had a 3-month experience there. And that was over Christmas and New Year's, and it just blew my mind. In a country where I couldn't speak the language, in a place that was just surrounded by rice fields, and the work that they were doing with leprosy patients and tuberculosis patients. And this really, it was what was the nickname? Paddy Field Hospital, because it was surrounded by rice fields. And I began to think, is this what God wants me to do with the rest of my life? And so I went back to medical school and went into an internship. And during that time, I began to think, if God wants me to be a missionary, maybe I should go learn more about the Bible. I ended up going to Fuller Seminary, their new School of World Mission, and just took a bunch of courses in anthropology and animism and biblical theology. And that was another really formative experience, both through what I studied and the people that I met. And some of the seminary students are friends of mine still. When I went to a medical missions conference in the spring of that year at Fuller, I was at a table for lunch, and Dr. Koop was there. He was one of the really famous and one of the pioneers of pediatric surgery. I knew him from 10th Presbyterian Church in Philadelphia, and he said, Neil, so what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And I told him, I'm not sure. And I was thinking of going to a residency on the West Coast. He said, no, don't go to the West Coast. Here, I'll get you a place in Baltimore. One of my students is now a general surgeon there. So he opened the door for me to do my surgical residency in Baltimore.
When you went to Thailand in your senior year, did you know you want to be a surgeon then, or you know what you want to do yet?
That's when I got interested in surgery, because I saw all the good that could be done. And with so many surgical problems, you could hardly have a small hospital and not have someone who knew, at least a general practitioner who knew how to do a lot of surgery, especially appendicitis and cesarean sections and things like that.
So if you're in Baltimore and you're in the area moving along in your studies and surgery and all that, how does missions come back into play? How does, especially you'd gone overseas with CIM, the China Inland Mission, now OMF International. But if you're in Baltimore now, how did all that come back into the fold?
That was in the back of my mind, and I still talked about it. While I was still in Philadelphia, I was going to 10th Pres. And the pastor knew that I was going to go to Thailand as a medical student. He asked me to go up front and to share a little testimony and what I planned to do when I got to Thailand. It turned out that at 10th Pres that day, 2 OMF members were there. OMF headquarters was in Germantown, a western suburb of Philadelphia at that time. Here I was going to an OMF hospital, and OMF in the U.S. had no idea that I was going there because I didn't know them. So these people went back and they had 2 guys, Jack Largent and Stu Imbach. They got in touch with me briefly before I went. And then they are the ones who invited me to all these OMF meetings and prayer times. And then they had a conference at Keswick, New Jersey. They invited me to all this. And that's really how I got to know OMF. Because when I went to Thailand, I didn't know anything about medicine, didn't know anything about Thailand, and didn't know anything about missions. But that all happened shortly upon returning home.
So when you decided that you're all in, and you're in the process of joining OMF, family, friends, church community, how's the reception of this?
Most of them were excited. My parents were very skeptical because they thought I was being conned by radical elements by cult-like people, because they didn't know what was going on. And looking back on it, I can see why they were scared for this son who was doing all this new stuff that no one had ever heard of in my family. So they had a hard time coming to grips with it. But I think what really happened was, what happened that really helped was they actually met these 2 people from OMF, maybe at Keswick, maybe at my commissioning service at the church. My commissioning service in the church was on the same night as Super Bowl #2, I think. So way back in the 60s, my brothers didn't want to go. I didn't even want to go. Everybody wanted to watch this new thing called the Super Bowl, but it happened.
I remember one of your friend, Ted Robb, was saying, this is a friend from high school that go to the same church, the First Methodist Church. And he told me that if you actually go to the field, we will support you. So he has been supporting me ever since until today. I think they're still sending support. Last year, they're still sending support.
For over 40 years.
Yeah.
Over 40 years.
That's incredible. Isn't that neat as you begin to wrestle with this and ask God for some clarification and direction, and then these types of things happen in that journey. So what year did you actually go over to Thailand full time?
Left for OC in Singapore, January 1978.
Okay.
And then April went to language school in Bangkok, and then a year there, and then up to Monterey, April 1979.
Okay. So now in the late 70s, you guys are now finally in the same country. At some point you meet. How'd this happen?
That was still sometime in the future. So this was early 70s, and some friends that I made in medical school went to a Chinese church. And so I went to this Chinese church for a while.
In Thailand or in the U.S.?
Bangkok.
Okay.
Really crucial thing that happened was going to the Thai Royal College of Surgeon meetings and meeting people there. And one of the missionaries that I met said, this guy is a vascular surgeon. He's in Bangkok. He just got back from the States and his vascular training. I want you to meet him. His name was Brasert. And our friendship started in 1979, and we're still friends. We still visit each other. And so we got to be friends. He'd take me to meetings, and he said, "Oh, Neil, when you come down from Monterey, when you go from Monterey to Bangkok, about 100 miles away, you can go to church with me." And so he took me to his church, which was a recent church plant where Wannee and her family had just become Christians. And so I started going there, and we didn't know each other. This was probably 79. They had been Christians for 4 or 5 years. We didn't really get to know each other until the mid-'80s. Because here, I was mostly at Monterey, and then I was on furlough in the States. So church was over, and my friend was driving me to his house from where I'd get a bus and go back up to Monterey. And I said, so who was that cute girl over there who was helping with taking care of the tithes for the church? Who was she? And he said, that's Wannee. And he told me briefly the story of the family, and they'd just become Christians, and said, yeah, she's really a neat person. And then his wife set up a date saying, I need to buy a pair of slacks. And so the next time I came down to Bangkok, would Wannee take me out to help me buy a pair of slacks at one of the department stores, central department store. And so she did that, and we had dinner. And then when it was all over, I asked her for her phone number, and she said, what? You want my phone number?
That's your version.
What's the real version, Wannee?
No, that's pretty close. That's good.
Yeah. So I told the truth this time.
There you go. So how did that unfold, Wannee? Your family, you're fairly infants in your Christian faith. Now all of a sudden you meet Neil, this doctor working up in the Mannerham Hospital, traveling back and forth as a missionary. Now you guys are going on your date. How's this all unfold and work its way out to the marriage point?
Okay, going back a little bit. So when I first go to church, starting with the church and things like that, so I was taught, okay, you better start praying for your husband. So you should ask God for, write out, like, this is what you like in your husband, the character.
You want your husband to be like.
Or something like that. I don't remember what I wrote, but I wrote something that I remember. I don't want to marry a pastor. I don't want to marry anybody in full-time ministry. I don't want to marry a seminary student, or that full-time workers. And then when I met him for the first time, I think at that point, I've seen him coming to church, but I don't know his name. I don't know anything about him. I just know that he is a friend of Dr. Preserve, and that's all I know. We never talked. And to add to the story, I think at that time, Neil had been serving in Thailand for like 11 years already, and then got burned out, went back to the States. And then he thought, like, is this a waste of time? Because he burned out and he's just not coming back to Thailand, but was thinking of the past 11 years that he was serving at a hospital. Is that a waste of time? So he thought, maybe not. So he would like to keep his visa and work permit active. So he came back just to renew that. That's when we met. Actually, that's when we met. And at the church, I remember the question that he asked me. The first time that we talked, he asked me, what is the time for Sunday school? And we were in the Sunday school class. Anyway, so that's a side note.
Very romantic.
Very spiritual too. So I think after I come to know the Lord, my whole family, I was really involved at church. I do almost everything except preaching. I taught children's Sunday school. I led the worship service. I do the finance for the church, went out for event, give out tracts and stuff. And then when I met Neil, start dating. And I think at that time, I didn't know he was a missionary. Because in my mind, that just never occurred to me that I would date a missionary. And I remember when we were dating, he said, if we married, I have to be a missionary. And I said, oh, no way. I'm not that type. I'm a worldly Christian. I'm after money. I don't want to be poor. And I think I really struggle with that at the end. I'm kind of like, God, what do you really want from me? And I remember in the Bible, it said, God has the best plan for me, for my life. And I asked myself, do I really believe what I think I believe? Because I have a plan for my own life, right? And I know God has a plan for my life too. But which plan is better? Of course, going to be God's plan, but do I really believe that? Can I trust that? I don't want to be a missionary. I don't want to do that. I've seen my sister's life, the one who first come to know the Lord. She commit her life to serve full time, and I saw how poor she was. I thought, I don't want to be like that. I'm okay working and support missionaries, but for me to be one is just really hard. So I remember I think along the way, one person kind of challenged me and said, am I willing to kind of write a letter to God, dear God, and leave everything blank and sign my name? I said, that was hard. I don't know. And I remember the list that I said, don't want to marry people who are like pastor, full-time ministry and stuff like that. And I don't want to be single either. And I kind of like Neil, but I don't want to be a missionary. And I remember one night, I kind of recommit my life to God. And I said, whatever you have for me, either to be single for the rest of my life, I'm okay with that. Either to marry Neil and be missionary, I'm okay with that. Or marry a pastor or whatever, you just fill in the blank for me. I'm okay with that. I remember crying, but really recommitted my life to Christ. And I remember we were dating and Neil said, maybe it's not going to work out. But step by step, God just led. And here we go. We married and moved to Mannerham. That was a new world for me.
Yeah. And the two of you both served at the hospital together in your different roles.
Right.
So what was that like?
I mean, I'm from Bangkok. Bangkok is a big city.
Yeah.
Dust, pollution, sound, noise, traffic. Manrum is the opposite of everything. Like in Bangkok, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, you go out, still restaurant open and stuff like that. At Manrum, at the hospital, 6 o'clock, everything closed. And maybe we could see 1 or 2 cars that come to the hospital. I was just like, where are the people? The town is just so quiet here. And the hospital, you can hear the generator, you can hear the baby crying. And I felt like an odd one because a lot of people in the hospital, they're doctors, nurses. I don't know any of the medical term. I have degree in business administration. So it's just like, I don't know what they're talking about. So I feel like about the missionary world, I don't even know when we get together for prayer, the missionary were praying about the town in central Thailand. I never heard of. I was just like, wow, these people really love my country and know my country more than I do. I know Bangkok, and that's all I know. And so it's very strange, I just feel like I don't fit in. Yeah, it took a lot of time to adjust to new life, to married life, to a new environment, new workplace, new friends at Manrum. But after 10 years, I don't want to leave. I don't want to come back to the States. I just fall in love with people and the place and everything.
So you guys were in Mandarin a total of 10 years?
For me, 10. For Neil is 20.
During that time, while you're there, Neil, the total 20, or Wannee, the 10, how are you seeing God at work through this ministry?
Well, let's back up a little bit. When OMF used to be China Inland Mission, and when China Inland Mission had to leave China, a lot of the medical people from mission hospitals there went to Thailand, and they found central Thailand with no known Christians, no hospitals, no known clinics, medical clinics. And so they decided to put the medical ministry parallel with the evangelistic ministry in central Thailand and build a hospital. I guess the initial reason for the hospital was to take care of leprosy patients because a lot of them had deformities and they needed surgery. And so the hospital was built in the mid-1950s. And that attracted a lot of attention and a lot of goodwill in the area. So when I went there as a medical student in the late 1960s, it hadn't even been there had been there for less than 15 years. And so a lot of building and a lot of building goodwill as well.
As OMF's establishing this type of ministry through medical missions in that area, are there any stories of God showing up in some really powerful way in people's lives through the hospital and the work that was being done there?
I forget the year, but I think it was one of the early years that I was there. There was a major bus crash about 2 miles from the hospital, 3 or 4 kilometers. And I don't know how many were killed, but I had about 10 patients right away and was in the operating room most of the next day and a half. And that was amazing. I don't know specifically if anyone became a Christian through that time. So you've got a Christian hospital, and the Thai people were very skeptical about their own medical care. And so they started to go to the foreign hospital and found out that the service was good. Not many of them went there because we were foreigners or Christians, but they wanted good care. But I guess over the years, maybe 60 or 70 people a year believed.
Wow.
And the people who believed from Mandarin Hospital and from a neighboring mission hospital were the foundation for the Mandarin Church and a church across the river in Uthai Thani and Chainat and Nakhon Sawan and some of the other small towns. So the presence of the hospital and the early church were really the beginning of churches and Christians in central Thailand. So that was very exciting.
I think you said that there was a survey that did, I forgot what year, and they said that about 50% of Christians have heard the gospel through the hospital during that time, right?
Yeah. Probably more than 50% of the believers in central Thailand in the mid to late 70s had first heard about Christ through the doorway of a mission hospital.
And I think at the hospital, we also have many staff. Actually, the Marum Church also kind of have a mission DNA. So one of the Narine and Relay, right? You know them. They are OMF. They used to work at Marum Christian Hospital. So he has a vision to be a missionary and start school of world mission, something like that. Anyway, he went to Cambodia for 10 years and come back, and he became OMF Thailand Home Council. And that's from the hospital. And then a daughter of a leprosy workers. So who is now OMF missionary serving in South Thailand. So there are a lot of people that currently serving the Lord that came through Marum Christian Hospital, either as a patient or staff or something like that.
Yeah, that's incredible how medical missions open the door for the gospel to enter into Thailand, and those open doors through the love and care that's given, begin to have those ripple effects throughout really decades now.
One of the insights that came to me further on in my experience, maybe even after I came back home, was that we established a hospital to care for people spiritually, soul, their bodies, and we were focused on the patients coming in. What I don't think we realized that the existence of the hospital was going to be a place of discipling, because most of the employees were Thai Buddhists. And I don't know the percentage, but a good number of them eventually became Christians. And it wasn't because they were preached at, but I think they heard the gospel every day because it was on the loudspeakers, but they saw the care that the missionaries and the Thai Christians were giving to the patients. Their hearts were changed because of what they heard and what they saw. They saw the gospel demonstrated. And that's really what medical missions is all about, no matter where it is.
Amen to that. So you guys are there, you're married, you're 10 years in. Is that, and you have a family, you're a growing family at that time. So that process of those 10 years to the point, I believe at the end of that 10 years is when you got the call or the ask to consider coming back to the U.S.?
I would say the ask, not the call.
Okay. So having a family, falling in love, like you had said, Wannee, with living in rural Thailand now, and all of a sudden this ask comes along. What's this experience like?
I remember we just filled in the evaluation form assessment, and I wrote down, I was so fulfilled working at the hospital and at the church, and can see ourselves working there forever. And then we got the email. Before we got the email, I was joking with Neil, like, wonder if there'll be something for Neil to do in the States. This is long before we got the email. So when we got the email, I thought, like, we got to be kidding. They asking the surgeon to be the national director.
Go figure.
Yeah, it doesn't fit. Who are we? And on top of that, I'm Thai. So, it's not going to work. But I think I'll let Neil tell the part.
Well, first of all, the thing in my head when I went to Thailand was all I want to be is a surgeon. Didn't want to get involved in administration and managing. I wasn't prepared for it. I didn't want to do it. But life happens, and lots of strange things happen on the mission field where there's no one else left to do it. And it fell to me. And then I had to go back on all the times I complained about management. If I ever become a manager, if I ever become the leader, I'm not going to do this. And all of a sudden, I had to stop talking and start doing something. And I really had read a lot about leadership and enjoyed it in principle, but I sure didn't know how to do it. But one of the things that I wanted to make sure happened as the new hospital director, I guess I was I wanted everyone to have a voice, be able to share, to be able to have input. And that wasn't always the case before that. And so that's just in very broad terms. I never had anything to do with church planting, but I wanted everyone at the hospital to know that we were part of a team that was advancing the gospel, both through the spoken word and the demonstrated word, the demonstration and practice. And one of the Thai ladies who was a nurse aide and later became a Christian, when she joined the Marum team, she'd been a very strong Buddhist. And when she went to the hospital, she said, I will never become a Christian. And so she didn't go to the morning prayers. She didn't go to any of the preaching. She didn't go to the church. But what she told me was it was what she saw that moved her heart, because she had been in a government hospital and difference between day and night in terms of how the patients were treated. I think one of the early patients that came to the Lord was someone who had an abscess, an appendiceal abscess. In my first couple of years, I saw more complications of appendicitis than I had seen in 4 years of residency in the States, because it's such a major problem, and we can't go into the details, but there are some reasons why it happens the way it does there. But to see this young girl have the surgery she needed and then come back and recover and then become a Christian was very, very encouraging for me.
Mm.
So I think let's go back to the call. And I remember when we got the call, right, the email, and because we were so fulfilled and so want to be at Monroe, but at the same time, we don't want to miss God's redirection. I think what Neil did was wrote to 5 pastor friends.
I wrote to 3. I wrote to 3.
3, okay.
3 friends. They were all pastors from different stages in my life. I didn't think God was calling me to come back home to the States. So I wrote to 3 people that I knew who were honest. They would give me their opinion, but I thought all of them would say, you should stay in Thailand. So I thought I had them on my side.
Stack the odds.
Yeah, stack the odds. All 3 wrote back from Philadelphia, from Baltimore, from somewhere else. And they said, I can see you doing this. If you think God is calling you to come back to the States and serve like this with the experience you've had overseas in Thailand, then I think you should seriously consider it. And that just changed everything. I put this fleece out, and now my
expecting a different result.
Yeah.
You're like, no, that's not why I wrote you guys.
Yeah. That's the wrong answer. It's like they called my bluff. Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they were like, for the hospital, everything you kind of have to plan way ahead of time, like your vacation, your home assignment, so that we'll make sure we have enough doctors in rotation. So I remember we just picked a date in June to come back to the States, and just out of the blue, nothing special, but just picked it. And when OMF asked, we're in the process of being considered for the national director, and they said, oh, can you come to Denver office for an interview with the board? And it just happened to be the date in June that we decided to come back to the state. The flights are just like, I feel like that's another God kind of arranging for us to be there at the right time.
Here's their way with words. Would you consider being considered?
Yeah.
Something then like national director.
So Wannee, what's that like? How old were you? Have the 2 boys, right?
Nathan and Kevin.
And how old were they at the time that you actually did decide that God's calling us to do this?
8 and 10.
2nd and 3rd grade.
8 and 10.
I know that they just finished 2nd and 1st grade.
Yeah. So they're still young.
Yeah.
At CMIS.
So that's got to be a big move, with the kids moving, everything they know is in Thailand, and then you now moving to a different culture.
Well, we're there in our lives, and I have lots of friends who were missionaries, different agencies, different parts of the world. And everyone would say, it's the kids that get hurt. It's the kids that get hurt. The parents have to move, but the kids are the ones that have to go through most of the translocation and all that. And we did not want to do what we had seen other parents do with their kids, missionaries. And we did the same thing. We did the exact same thing. And it was really hard on Nathan and Kevin. I mean, at the point when we first came home, Kevin and Nathan were speaking Thai to each other. And then as soon as they met all their cousins and everything was in English, then they both lost their Thai within half a year, I think.
Yeah.
So that's just sad to see those things happen.
That's a big transition, especially saying goodbye to a ministry where you've seen God show up in so many ways and you were a part of it. But now
the hard part was like when we left Thailand, we can't tell anyone that we might not come back. So we can't say goodbye either. And so that was hard, really hard. You cannot just say, oh, I might not come back. Can the hospital give me this gift? That kind of thing. Or we just can't say that. And then once we were in the States and we went through the ND, we became designate ND. And, or even before that, somehow the word got out to Thailand, to Maram people. And I remember talking to one of my friends, and she said, oh, how come you left us? And I was just crying. I was just like, I would like to say, I would like to tell you, but I can't. And so that was really hard that you can't say it.
When you do make the decision to move, and obviously the goodbyes are difficult, and we never know, is this the last goodbye or will we see you again? All that is really an emotional roller coaster, but you become the national director. What's that experience like? Now you're looking at the care of missionaries coming out of the States, the mobilization of new workers coming from the States. You did that for how many years?
About 10.
About 10 years. And then Wannee, were you because your current role is you're helping short-term workers get to the field. Is that something you went right into at that time you guys moved back, or was it something different?
I think the first year when we were here, I think because we were like transition, I want to help the kid get settled and, kind of learning his role. I just so new in Denver, have no friends, know nobody. So I think the first 6 months, I'm kind of like, I don't want to get involved just yet. Try to find where do I fit into the OMF ministry here? Because there's no job description for the ND's wife. What would she do? There's nothing. And talk to someone. She said, oh, you can write your own job description. And I said, oh, that's great. I love it. But at least give me a framework so I can do that. But it was blank. And I think I was trying to find where would I fit in to OMF US ministry, try different things. Oh, actually, I tried one, but feel like that's not me. And then Angie kind of invite Neil and I to kind of experience different ministry. So she invited us to...
that was Angie Mackey.
Angie Mackey.
Yep.
Invite us to celebration debriefing in California. So just to experience that. When I would say, I feel like, oh, this is it. I love people. I enjoy admin. I enjoy connecting with people. So this could be it. But then my kid was still in school, so I started off with part-time, just kind of learning my role and stuff like that. I think that was 2002. Yeah.
And you're still doing it today, so you must love it.
Yeah, I love it. Now you can't take me away. Yeah, I love it.
So Serve Asia, for our listeners, that's our ministry that cares for short-term workers, all the pre-filled stuff, the sending off and the returning, caring for them when they return back to the States. And Wannee's been there, and she's part of the team, and we praise God for that. No, it has to be a very weird experience going from a surgeon to the national director role here in the U.S. 10 years of that. What was that like? How did that unfold? And how did you go from being in there doing surgery to now a new type of surgery, dealing with admin and goals
Dealing
and
with people.
KRAs?
I think I developed a talk about that from the operating room to the boardroom. I guess as I began to analyze it, that not the cutting, but probably the organization that goes into running an operating room and seeing that there's a good result, trying to apply some of that to OMF US. And OMF US had been going through some really down years, and there hadn't been a lot of candidates for quite a few years, and finances were down. So it was a very low moment when I arrived. And when was that? 2001? 2001, yeah. And so we got together with the people who were there at the time and had some retreats and prayed. And as far as I know, we didn't do anything special. I don't know that we changed anything, but this is where I see the act of God or the hand of God. I had been there. The first candidate course was I started in November of 01, and the next June or July of 02 was the first candidate course. And there were like 25 or 30 candidates.
Wow.
And they hadn't seen that many candidates for the previous 4 or 5 years. And it's like, where did that come from? And at that time, we still had regions, and we had regional directors. And most of these were from the West Coast, a few from the Northwest, a few from the East, but mostly from the Southwest. And I still don't know that we have an answer. How did that happen? But that was the beginning of a lot of growth of OMF US, because that continued for maybe 7 or 8 years. That was just an amazing time to see what God was doing.
Yeah, definitely. That's a very clear experience where you come in and you just go, I don't know how to do this. God, you got to show up. And then God shows up. And you could even to this day go, I still don't know how that all happened outside
I
of God
wish I
just
could have
showing up.
said, well, I did this, that,
I gave this
look at the
speech.
change, and I did it, and look what happened. But it
Yeah.
wasn't that at all.
Praise God for that.
Yeah,
All glory to him.
that's right.
So you've since retired from the position, but you're still doing mobilization.
I really had no idea what I was going to do when ND was over. During my sabbatical year, I visited some friends, some OMF friends, some friends that didn't have anything to do with OMF. And this one guy said, so we spent about 3 days, a night or two together at his place in California. And he said, well, I don't know what you should do next, Neil, but it seems like all you talk about is medical missions. I mean, that's where your heart is. That's where that's what turns your crank. And I thought, oh, wow. And so I started going to medical missions conferences, to GMHC and some other denominational ones. I began to read medical missions. Actually, I did that through when I was MD. When I'd have an afternoon off, I'd go to a library and I'd go to I think it was Denver Seminary Library before it moved. And there was a section on medical missions. And I just take books down and start reading. God took me off the medical mission field, but he didn't take medical missions out of my heart. And so I continued reading stories of medical missionaries. And so by the time ND was over, I knew I loved medical missions, but what was I going to do about it? What was that going to look like? And in the end, it became starting what I called, OMF had taken in a lot of doctors, a lot of nurses. They weren't really mobilizing for them, but they came because of opportunities that they knew of on the field, maybe Evergreen or MSI, which was part of OMF.
A lot of people, a lot of medical personnel.
Yeah. So after, I think the sabbatical year, maybe the year after, I was talking with Michael, I think, and said, well, what if we have a department of medical missions or section of medical missions or an emphasis, depending upon where you want to go organizationally. And we could be more intentional about mobilizing for medical missions. And of course, that meant I needed to continue doing what I already started. And I did a database of all the medical people that I knew from going to medical mission conferences in Thailand and elsewhere. And I wrote to these people, I don't know, maybe 20, 25 that I knew. And I said, would you write back? Would you tell me who are other medical people in OMF, maybe from Germany or Switzerland or other home sites that I don't know about? And from the early number that I had, it grew to maybe 60 or 70. And I got in touch with them. I started a database. I talked about sort of who's doing what, where, and when do you start? And so that was really the beginning of what's continued as an intentional emphasis on understanding what we've done, continue practicing, and preparing for the future.
So if anybody's listening to this right now and they are in the medical field in some capacity, and it's 2025, is there still a need for medical missions? And is OMF actually still looking for anybody in the medical world to join?
Yes, absolutely. There are still some medical opportunities.
In Cambodia, in Mongolia.
There's a Mercy Medical Center in Cambodia, and then there's some work in Siem Reap, and there's some nurses doing work in tuberculosis. There's a couple in Indonesia doing TB work in
Indonesia, also in Vietnam. I think they're looking for a professional to go in and, you know.
See, I haven't done this for a couple of years now, but started with a list of about 100. I think there might be 60 or 70 now that are still in OMF, still doing medicine. But it's not concentrated. We haven't had an OMF hospital since Monterey Christian Hospital closed in 2007.
Okay.
So we don't have an OMF hospital, but some of our people have worked in government hospitals. There's a Korean gastroenterologist whose children studied in the States, and that's where we met. And he's now a gastroenterologist in a government hospital in the central province of Vietnam. I haven't looked at the stats for quite some time, but we probably still have 40 or 50 medical people, and we are encouraging people to join us and pursue these opportunities.
Yeah, because we've gone from a time where we were actually building hospital facilities and bringing in medical professionals to deal with those, to where we're now joining other maybe government-run facilities, and in a unique way through that, sharing the love of Christ with probably many other people than we would have ever been able to do if we kept building hospitals ourselves and staffing them and those types of things. Yeah.
I don't know if any of the listeners subscribe to EMQ. I think it's part of Missio Nexus now.
Okay.
But I wrote an article maybe 3 years ago called The Past, Present, and Future of Healthcare Missions. And so that gives an overview of the history, what's going on now, and what the future might look like.
Oh, that's great. We'll try to put that in the show notes. I will say that the two of you have also played a role in not only my family's lives in getting to serve with the both of you here in the States, but also in my daughter's life over the past couple of years, as she is actually on the pursuit, that path of medical missions, joining you at Medical Missions Conference, and then Wannee getting to send my oldest daughter overseas this past summer.
Okay.
To do
personal.
to do an exploratory trip to see, what it might look like if God really does keep pushing her down that path and she joins and goes into the medical missions world. I'm grateful for it.
I mean, side note here, if an audience who's listening now interested in medical mission, you can go check on OMF website and healthcare mission team. There's a website talk about opportunities and who to get in touch, inquiries and stuff like that. You can do that as well.
Yeah. Now looking back into your lives and into your testimony, and as we come to the end of our time together, are there any words of encouragement, words of wisdom that God has placed on your heart that you've learned over the years as His story unfolded into your lives? What would you like to leave our listeners with in these final moments?
When I look back over the last 50, 60 years, a lot of question marks, a lot of doubt, a lot of not knowing what the future held. I think God has been so good in the family that I grew up in, the church that I attended, the emphasis on the Creator God and the gospel and the need for knowing Him and understanding Him, and then who God put next to me in terms of friends who had been missionaries, in terms of a year at Fuller, in terms of even when I was people in the church I attended when I was in residency, people that are still friends today. These people spoke into my life at times when they didn't know how significant they were. And maybe I didn't even know that. But God had people along the way at my side, both sides, front and back. And so He was really preparing me in ways that I didn't know until I got old and began to look back and reflect on it and write a paper here and stuff there and realize, wow, God has really been good.
Yeah.
And is good.
Amen.
Now, looking back, actually, this morning, Neil and I were just talking, like, I never dreamed that we would live here at the retirement facility. I never dreamed that I would live in the U.S. I never dreamed I would marry a foreigner. We're looking back.
Never dreamed I would marry a foreigner.
I thought, looking back at my list, I don't want to marry this, and I don't want to be a missionary, but it has been a good journey. God is good, and His plan is the best. And it has been good journey, fun, interesting, lots of experience, ups and downs, and God is always there. And He is the one that you can trust. He is faithful. So trust in Him, choose His plan.
Amen to that. Well, thank you so much for the time, for coming and sitting and sharing your story. Obviously, within our time, the time that's allotted to us, we can't get into everything. But I am grateful that you've come and you're able to share with us your testimony and how God has been at work over the years. It truly is a blessing. Honored to be serving with you. Honored to, in my lifetime, been able to know you, the both of you. Truly blessed and grateful for everything you have done and continue to do for the kingdom of God and reaching the unreached peoples out there in this world. So thank you.
And thank you for the younger generations moving in. And
do I still qualify for that?
Well, yeah.
Hey, Ronnie, and go do likewise.
That's right.
Go do likewise.
Amen. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you.
To learn more about OMF, visit us at omf.org/US.